This Shabbos is the commencement of the Elul month, a time where the Jewish people are to do a cheshbon nefesh, an inward, introspective contemplation, and get ready to approach God on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. In the Chabad Machzor is told the story of the great Rebbe, Reb Aaron of Karlin, that once, before the Hamelech, which is the true beginning of the Rosh Hashanah liturgy, he fainted into a deep faint. When he later came to, they asked him, "Why did you faint?" To which he responded, "That I contemplated regarding the story brought in the Talmud and Gittin of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai coming to Vespasian. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai came to Vespasian. Vespasian told him that you're deserving of execution. Why? Because imalka ana, if I'm truly a king, where were you until now?" Rabbi Aaron Karlin responded, "And what can I respond?" Meaning that he realized that God is infinitely transcendent. God is infinitely awesome. And no matter what we do, we seem to be insignificant. And our service of God is insignificant. That being the case, imalka ana, the question of if I'm a king, ada ina, where were you? The question of where was man until now is a question that constantly reverberates within us, no matter the greatness and awesomeness of our service. Even Rabbi Aaron of Karlin asked himself, "Where was I until now?" That being the case, we have a simple question. If God is infinitely transcendent and awesome, then how could we ever approach the King? How could we ever come to God? How could we ever be ready for Rosh Hashanah when God is infinitely transcendent? On this comes a mashal from the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe explains that the time of Elul is a time when the king comes into the field. When the king is in the field, every single person is able to greet the king. The people of the city come out of the city and greet the king, and the people of the field could greet the king. More so, even the people that are in the deserts could come out of the deserts and go to the king and greet him. And to each person, he shows a benevolent face and a shining countenance. Now, I think oftentimes people don't truly appreciate what this mashal is teaching us, what this allegory conveys. And what it's truly explaining is how can a person who is a Rasha, who is a simple person, begin to commence service to the Almighty. Not only when a person contemplates God's infinite transcendence, does a person realize that if God is infinitely transcendent, then less machshava tfisa bey. No mind can possibly grasp him. And if no mind can grasp him, then how can I love him? How can a person love and attach himself and connect to something that is, no matter how close you come to him, you're infinitely far. More so, the Zohar explains on the pasuk Tze'ena ure'ena b'noi Tzion b'melech. Let us go out and see the king. That the Zohar explains that before a person serves God, he tells his ego, I'm going out to contemplate the awesomeness of the king. And when the Yetzer Hara, with the ego, with the Nefesh HaBahamis hears that, it immediately runs away. It immediately becomes disinterested. And the reason is simple. When you tell a person that God is transcendent, that God is awesome, what that invokes is that I'm insignificant. If I'm insignificant, then I'm not interested. This is what the pasuk in Mishlei says, the verse in Mishlei says, Lo yachboitz haksil betfuna. The fool does not want understanding. Ki im behiskalus libay. It wants the revelation of his heart. Meaning to say that for the Rasha, for the person who identifies with his ego, with his nefesh habahamis, he doesn't want tfuna. He doesn't want to realize and understand and really become cognizant of God's awesomeness. For if God is awesome, I'm worthless. I'm insignificant. And if I'm insignificant, then my ego is insignificant. But however, the Nefesh HaBahamis wants its ego. The person wants its ego. And if I want my ego, then you tell me, oh, go see the king, the awesomeness of the king. Go see how awesome the king is. No, I'm not interested. If I see how awesome God is, then I cease to be. And I don't want that. So that's the conundrum. How do you inspire a person who is at the level that they identify with their ego, that they feel themselves, how do you get him to appreciate God? And the answer is the mashal that the Alter Rebbe explains of the king in the field. What the king in the field is telling us is that not only is God transcendent, not only is he awesome and glorious and word significant, but no, the king is in the field. The king, God, is as well immanent. God is as well present. Meaning to say that a person is to contemplate and realize that this same God that is transcendent goes and the world is insignificant towards him. Paradoxically, the world is of utmost importance to him, for he creates it. And he creates me. And he creates my ego. Not only did he create it 5,776 years ago, but each and every single moment there's constant creation. Meaning that God is telling me that I'm important, that my identity is important, and who I am is important. And that's what the king in the field is conveying. The king in the field is conveying that on our initial steps, the initial steps of serving God, to a person who is uninspired, he should approach God. The king is in the field. Immanence. God is here. God doesn't break you. He doesn't break your identity. He loves you. He creates you. He shows you a benevolent face, a shining countenance. And when a person realizes that, they begin to grow and mature in their service to God. Yeah, initially they come to God to see, to appreciate themselves. Maybe they're going to go to God. They're going to ask Him to patch their roof, their needs. But slowly they're going to realize that God creates the world. And when they realize that God creates the world, They're going to begin to love God. Wow, God is telling me that I'm important. And then they begin to realize that God is telling me that I'm important. Meaning to say, God is awesome. And God is telling me I'm important. They realize the awesomeness of God. And eventually, they mature till they're able to connect to their transcendent level. They're able to connect with the awesomeness of God. So what Elul is, the reason why Elul is the inspiration for the Russia to connect to God is because on our first steps, we connect to God on an immanent level. We realize that He is a king that we could approach, that He loves us, that He connects to us. And when we do so, we graduate to eventually be able to be from the choices of the nation who approach God in His own chambers. Not for our own needs, not for what we want, but the way God is for Himself. That we don't come to God because we want something of Him. We want to be completely enveloped and nullified in His presence. Now, in the mashal of the king in the field, the Alter Rebbe explains that the people of the city come out to the field to greet Him. Not only do the people of the field are able to approach Him, but the people of the city come out to greet Him. And that's speaking to a person who's on a deeper level, which means when the king is in the field, when he's immanent, a person's not inspired to see Him. He's not in his, doesn't come out with his pomp, with his glory, with his entourage, with his royal vestments. He comes in simple clothing. So he doesn't inspire awe in the people who see him. However, if a person is smart, and a person is deep, and they realize the truth, they realize that although God is coming to me in a way that I'm not inspired, it doesn't inspire me, it doesn't awaken a sense of awe of Him, but all of this is clothing. Underneath the simple clothing of the city clothing, of how He is in the royal chambers, or how He is in the field, underneath that is the king. And the person who's truly deep, and he connects to the king himself on the depth of the true level, he realizes that's the king himself under the clothing. And when he comes, he also, when he approaches immanence, when he sees God how He is in Elul, he realizes, yes, in the immanence is not that there's a God as He is immanent and God as He is transcendent, but the same God who is transcendent is as well immanent. And that is a true level of Elul. To approach God and appreciate that a Jew can become one with God Himself. So please God, we should truly focus on the month of Elul and truly seize the moment and seize the month to use it as a time of introspection and growth, to begin in a way of immanence, though it's the King Himself, and to grow in our service to God, so that truly this Rosh Hashanah we can come to the Almighty and experience God Himself, not because of what we want, but be truly enveloped in God's presence.